The showroom smelled like money. Not the clean kind, more like polished leather and espresso and the faint bite of jet fuel that clung to people who spent their lives near hangars. A wall of glass looked out onto the tarmac where sleek aircraft sat like sleeping predators under the afternoon sun. Beyond them, a private terminal shimmered with quiet exclusivity. Tinted windows, soft silhouettes, no crowds, no noise. The kind of place where nobody raised their voice because everyone already assumed they'd be obeyed. Until he walked in. He wore a charcoal hoodie under a black wool coat, simple jeans, clean sneakers. No designer logos screaming for attention. No entourage. No loud watch-catching light like bait. Just a man with calm eyes, hands in his pockets, and a stillness that didn't ask permission. A receptionist looked up, smiled automatically, and then the smile flickered. Her eyes moved over him again, slower this time, like her brain was editing a scene that didn't match what she expected. "Can I help you?" she asked, and the words were polite, but the tone slid sideways, thin, cautious, already doubting. He nodded once. "I'm here to see the G800. A pause. Across the room, a man in a tailored navy suit glanced over from a desk. His gaze landed on the hoodie, the coat, the sneakers. His mouth tightened like he'd tasted something sour. The receptionist's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," the man said evenly. "But I'm ready to buy. Today." The suit stood up. He moved with the confidence of someone used to being believed. His shoes clicked on marble. His tie was perfect. His hair was perfect. His smile, when it arrived, was sharp. "So," he said, as if the word itself was a test. "This facility is for serious clientele." The man's eyes stayed calm. "That's why I'm here." The suit's smile widened. A small, private amusement. The kind of grin people wore when they thought no one could touch them. "Right," he said. "Of course." A couple near the glass wall turned slightly, the woman's diamond earrings catching light as she angled her head to listen. Two mechanics in branded jackets paused near a display model, pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. The man in the hoodie didn't shift, didn't fidget, didn't apologize for being there. "I'd like to see the aircraft," he said. The suit leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was doing him a favor. "Look, I don't know who told you could just walk in here and—" "I'm not here for a tour," the man replied. "I'm here to make a purchase." The suit let out a small laugh, almost kind. Almost. Then his eyes hardened. "Security," he called, not loudly, but with the casual authority of someone who expected the building to move at his command. "Can we get someone out front?" The receptionist blinked quickly. "Mr. Harlan." "It's fine," the suit said, still smiling. "We can't have disruptions." The word hung in the air like a stain. The man in the hoodie slowly turned his head, looking around the room. He caught the eyes of a teenager standing near a brochure rack, phone already lifted slightly, camera peeking over his fingers. The teen's eyes were wide, the red live dot reflected in the glass like a tiny warning. The man's gaze softened, not at the recording, but at the fact that the world was about to see exactly who people chose to be when they thought power belonged to them. Two uniformed security guards appeared from a side corridor, broad-shouldered, hands near their belts. They looked him up and down, like the suit had already written the story and they were just stepping into their roles. "Sir," the taller guard said, voice firm, "we're going to need you to leave." The man didn't move. "I haven't done anything wrong," he said quietly. The suit, Harlan, tilted his head, the smirk back in place. "You're refusing to comply with staff. That's trespassing." "That's not how trespassing works," the man said. A few bystanders murmured. Someone laughed nervously. The second guard stepped closer. "Last warning." The teen's phone lifted higher. A woman near the glass whispered, "Oh my God," like she was watching a scene she'd seen before, but never in real life. The man looked at the guards, then at Harlan, then at the receptionist whose face had gone pale. And still, he stayed calm. His voice didn't rise. His hands stayed in his pockets. "You can escort me out," he said, "but you should be absolutely sure you want to do that." Harlan chuckled. "Are you threatening us now?" The man's eyes didn't flay. They didn't beg. They didn't shrink. They simply held. "No," he said. I'm warning you. The taller guard reached for his arm. The showroom seemed to inhale. And right then, right at the edge of humiliation becoming something worse, his phone began to ring. The man didn't flinch. He pulled it from his pocket with deliberate calm, glanced at the screen, and for the first time, something shifted in the air. Not fear, not anger, certainty. He lifted the phone to his ear. Yes, he said softly. A beat. His gaze drifted to Harlan, steady as a locked sight line. I'm standing in your showroom, he continued, and your people are about to make a very expensive mistake. He listened. Then his mouth tightened, not in rage, but in resolve. Put it on speaker, he said, and as the call clicked to speaker, the room leaned in, because whatever was coming next felt like the moment the entire story would flip. Earlier that morning, the sun had risen over a different kind of quiet. Not the quiet of polished marble and private terminals. The quiet of a neighborhood waking up with its guards still half-raised. A small house on the edge of the city, peeling paint on the fence. A basketball hoop with a frayed net. 2 potted plants on the porch that looked like someone fought hard to keep them alive. Inside, the kitchen was warm with the smell of oatmeal and cinnamon. He stood at the counter, stirring slowly, listening to the rhythmic click of a ceiling fan that had seen better years. A framed photo sat near the sink, him in a graduation cap, arm around an older woman whose smile had a tired strength to it. Another photo, a younger boy on his shoulders, both of them laughing like the world didn't weigh anything at all. He set 2 bowls on the table. A boy, maybe 9, padded and wearing mismatched socks. Hair still messy from sleep. He rubbed his eyes and smiled. Morning, Dad. Morning, Malik, he said, and his voice softened in a way it never did for strangers. Eat. Malik climbed into the chair. You got the cinnamon. Always. The boy shoveled a spoonful into his mouth and spoke around it. You leaving again? The man sat across from him. For a bit. Malik frowned. Where? He hesitated, not because he didn't want to tell him, because he wanted to tell him in a way that didn't sound like a fairy tale. Somewhere that builds airplanes, he said. Malik's eyes widened. Like real planes. Real ones. Like the ones with the fancy seats. A smile tugged at the man's mouth. Those 2. Malik stared like he was trying to picture his father inside a world he'd only seen on screens. Then his face tightened, serious in the way kids got when they felt something heavy but didn't have words for it. Are they gonna be mean to you? The question landed softly but deep. The man leaned back, studying his son's face. He saw his own eyes in there, saw his mother's steadiness, saw the inheritance of a world that asked certain people to brace themselves before they even walked into a room. They might, he admitted. Malik's shoulders dropped. Then don't go. The man reached across the table, placed his hand over his son's small one. I have to, he said gently. Not because I want their approval. Because we don't shrink away from places we belong. Malik swallowed. But, how do you know you belong? The man's gaze drifted to the window, to the street outside where a neighbor's car sat on blocks and someone's dog barked at nothing, guarding a home that never felt fully safe. He remembered being a boy here. The way teachers looked surprised when he answered correctly. The way store clerks followed him down aisles like his pockets were guilty. The way he learned early that calm wasn't weakness, it was armor. He looked back at Malik. You belong anywhere you stand with dignity, he said. And you don't let anyone take that from you. Malik nodded slowly, like he wanted to believe it so badly it hurt. After breakfast, the man walked Malik to the bus stop. The boy hugged him hard. Bring me a picture, Malik said, of the plane. I will. And be careful. The man kissed his forehead. Always. When the bus pulled away, he stood there a moment, watching until it turned the corner. Then he exhaled, long and quiet. A black sedan waited at the curb. He climbed in. The driver nodded respectfully. Morning, sir. Morning, he replied. The driver hesitated. Are you sure you don't want to wear the suit? The man glanced down at his hoodie, then out the window. They'll see what they want to see either way, he said. I'm not dressing for their comfort. The driver's jaw tightened like he understood. As they drove toward the private terminal, the city shifted outside the windows, brick and chain-link fences giving way to glass towers and sculpted hedges. The closer they got to that world, the more the air felt like it belonged to people who had never been told no. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a message. "Board chair. Call me when you arrive." He stayed at it for a second, then slipped the phone away. He wasn't nervous, but he was aware, because he knew something most people didn't. Humiliation didn't always come with raised voices. Sometimes it came with polite smiles and the quiet assumption that you were lost. He'd built his life on the opposite of that assumption. Years ago, he'd been the kid who stayed late after school because home was loud with worry. He'd been the teenager who worked nights stacking boxes, then woke up early to study. He'd been the young man who sat in engineering lectures with professors who never made eye contact when they asked questions, until he spoke and they had to hear him. He'd been underestimated so often that it stopped feeling personal. It started feeling predictable, and predictable things could be used. By the time he arrived at the terminal, his name wasn't on a sign. No red carpet rolled out. No assistant waited with a clipboard. Because today wasn't about ceremony. It was about a purchase. A luxury aircraft, yes, but also something else. Something bigger. He walked into the showroom anyway, calm, steady, unannounced. Because he'd spent his life learning. If you always ask permission to exist, you'll never stop begging. Back in the showroom, the call on speaker snapped the air into a tight wire. A voice came through. Clear, measured, older. The kind of voice that didn't need to shout because it was used to rooms going quiet for it. "This is Vivian Locke," the voice said, chair of the board of Larkspur Aviation Holdings. Heads turned. Even the mechanics by the display straightened. Harlan blinked once, then let out a laugh that sounded wrong now, like a joke told at a funeral. He said, overconfident out of habit. "There must be some confusion." "There's confusion," Vivian Locke replied. "And it is yours." The room went so quiet that the hum of the vac system suddenly sounded loud. The man in the hoodie, still held by the moment, still inches from being grabbed, tilted the phone slightly so everyone could hear. Vivian continued, crisp as steel wrapped in silk. "I'm currently on a video call with our legal counsel," she said, "and I'm watching a live stream of your showroom, Mr. Harlan." Harlan's smile flickered. Somewhere, the teenager's phone light glowed brighter as comments poured in, hearts rising like bubbles. A woman near the glass whispered, "Oh no." Vivian's voice sharpened. "Do you recognize the man you're attempting to have removed?" Harlan glanced at him again, truly looked this time, like maybe, if he stayed hard enough, he could force reality to match his prejudice. "No," Harlan said slowly. "I don't." "That man," Vivian said, "is Andre Pierce." A ripple moved through the crowd. Some didn't know the name, but they recognized the weight in Vivian's tone. Vivian continued, each word landing like a gavel. "Mr. Pierce is the majority stakeholder of this facility's parent company," she said. "He is also the founder of Pierce Aeronautics Initiative, the nonprofit that funds scholarships through our corporate foundation." Harlan's face drained so fast it looked like someone pulled a plug. The taller guard's hand loosened from Andre's sleeve. He stepped back half an inch without realizing he did it. Vivian's voice didn't soften. "And Mr. Pierce is here today because I asked him to personally approve the next phase of our fleet modernization and finalize the purchase of an aircraft that will be used for disaster response logistics under our public-private partnership." The words disaster response seemed to shift the room, because suddenly this wasn't about luxury. It was about purpose. It was about lives. The teenager's live stream chat exploded, people typing faster than they could think. Someone in the back whispered, "That's him," like a myth had stepped off a screen. Harlan swallowed. I wasn't informed." Vivian cut him off, voice like an elevator cable snapping. "You weren't informed because you weren't supposed to need informing," she said. "You were supposed to do your job without profiling a customer, without humiliating a man, without weaponizing security because your assumptions made you uncomfortable." Harlan's mouth opened, then closed. The marble floor beneath him might as well have turned to water. Andre finally spoke again, voice low but steady. "Mr. Harlan," he said, "you called security on me." Harlan's eyes darted around, searching for an exit that didn't exist. Andre looked at the guards. Two men who now looked caught between duty and shame. You were doing what you were told, Andre said to them quietly. But you should know, compliance is not the same as justice. The taller guard's jaw tightened. Sir, I'm sorry. Andre nodded once. Not forgiving, not cruel, just acknowledging. Vivian's voice returned, colder now. Mr. Harlan, she said, you are suspended effective immediately. Do not leave the premises. Our HR director and legal team en route. A collective inhale swept the showroom. Harlan's knees looked like they might give. The receptionist covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Andre turned slightly, looking at the crowd, at the phones, at the eyes. Then he did something Harlan never would have expected. He raised his own phone, not to gloat, not to capture humiliation, to make sure the record was complete. Keep recording, Andre said to the teenager, gentle but firm. Not because I want revenge. Because people keep saying this doesn't happen. The teenager nodded, swallowed hard. Andre turned back to Harlan. Now, Andre said quietly, let's finish what I came here to do. He looked toward the glass wall, where the aircraft gleamed. I'd like to see the G-800, he repeated. This time, nobody questioned whether he belonged. The consequences didn't arrive like thunder. They arrived like paperwork, like signatures, like emails that started with urgent in the subject line. Within an hour, the showroom was no longer a pristine stage. It became a contained crisis. A woman in a gray blazer walked in with a badge clipped to her belt and a face like she'd learned to keep emotions locked behind protocol. HR. Two attorneys followed. One carried a slim briefcase. The other carried a tablet already playing the live stream. Outside, the tarmac crew kept moving because airplanes didn't care about human shame. But inside, time slowed. Harlan sat in a glass-walled conference room, hands shaking so badly he spilled water when he tried to drink. His suit jacket looked suddenly too sharp, too expensive, too pointless. The HR director's voice was calm, almost bored. Mr. Harlan, she said, we are conducting an immediate investigation into discriminatory conduct, abuse of authority, and violation of customer policy. Harlan tried to speak. I didn't. Listen, it's not. He didn't look like. One of the attorneys held up a hand. Stop. Harlan swallowed, eyes wet. It was a misunderstanding, he whispered. I thought. The attorney's eyes were flat. You thought what? Harlan's throat moved, but the words wouldn't come out because saying them out loud would make them undeniable. The live stream did that already. Outside the conference room, Andre stood near the glass wall with Vivian on video, looking out at the aircraft. A sales manager, someone who hadn't smirked once, walked him through specs with a voice that trembled slightly, not from fear but from awareness of history happening in real time. Meanwhile, the internet moved faster than any legal team could. Clips of the confrontation spread within minutes. The title on one repost read, "They tried to kick him out, then the board chair called." Another, "Luxury jet dealer calls security on black buyer, instant karma." But Andre didn't like that word. Karma made it sound mystical. This wasn't mystical. This was systemic. By evening, major outlets had picked it up. Commentators debated customer profiling like it was new. People shared their own stories in threads thousands deep, being followed in stores, questioned in lobbies, asked to prove they belonged in rooms they'd earned. Larkspur Aviation Holdings Communications team issued a statement before sunset, an apology, an investigation, a commitment to review policies. And then the numbers started moving. Not in a dramatic movie way, in the real-world way that made executives sweat. A key corporate client, one that had already been uneasy about brand optics, paused negotiations on a contract renewal pending review. A foundation partner emailed, "We need to talk about alignment and values." A city council member publicly questioned whether Larkspur should remain eligible for certain municipal contracts if their facilities were hostile to the public-facing mission they claimed to support. The stock didn't crash, but it dipped enough to make headlines. Enough to make people in boardrooms sit up straighter. Enough to make a lot of people suddenly care about the thing they'd ignored when it was happening to strangers. Harlan's personal consequences came next. His suspension became termination within 48 hours. His professional network turned into a silent room. Friends who once laughed at his jokes stopped answering his calls, not because they were morally awakened, but because association suddenly had a price. When he walked out of the facility carrying a cardboard box with his desk items, the cameras were waiting outside the gates. He kept his head down, but the internet had already memeized his face. At home, he tried to explain to his wife that it was blown out of proportion, that he didn't mean it like that he was just doing his job. She stared at him for a long time, the kind of stare that made him feel naked. "Did you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "why you never needed to mean it for it to hurt?" He had no answer, and the shame that followed wasn't cinematic. It was slow. It was the kind that sat with you at the dinner table when your kids asked why you weren't going to work. It was the kind that turned your own house into a mirror. 2 days after the incident, Andre stood at a podium in a modest auditorium that belonged to his nonprofit. Fluorescent lights, folding chairs, a banner that read Pierce Aeronautics Initiative in bold letters. No marble, no espresso, no private terminal hush. Just people, students, parents, community organizers, and cameras. The clip had made him viral, and now everyone wanted the sequel where he destroyed the man who doubted him. He didn't give them that. He looked out at the crowd, then at the lens. He took a breath. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "I want to say something," he began, to the people who watched what happened and felt satisfied. A murmur moved through the room. He continued, eyes steady. "I understand the feeling," he said. "When you've been humiliated in 1,000 quiet ways, when you've been treated like a suspect in places where you're just trying to live, watching someone get exposed can feel like balance." He paused. "But I don't want balance," he said. "I want change." Silence thickened. Andre's gaze softened. "The man who smirked at me didn't invent bias," he said. "He inherited it. He practiced it. He benefited from it. And in that moment, he believed it would protect him." Andre leaned slightly toward the mic. "Here's the truth," he said. "Bias doesn't always wear a hood. Sometimes it wears a suit and smiles politely while it asks for your papers. Sometimes it says, 'Do you have an appointment?' when it really means, 'Prove you're not an exception.'" A few people nodded, eyes shining. Andre continued, voice calm but sharper now. "I stay calm because I've learned something," he said. "If you let them pull you into chaos, they'll point at the chaos and call it your nature. They'll say you're angry. You're dangerous. You're the problem." He looked down for a moment, like he was choosing each word with care. "Dignity isn't weakness," he said. "It's discipline." Then he lifted his head. "And accountability," he added, "is not revenge." He let that sit. "When someone is held accountable," Andre said, "it's not so we can celebrate their fall. It's so the next person doesn't have to walk into that room and feel their stomach drop. It's so a child watching at home doesn't learn that humiliation is normal." He thought of Malik. He could almost feel his son's small hand under his own. Andre's voice warmed. "If you see someone being treated like they don't belong," he said, "you don't have to be a hero. You don't have to be loud. You just have to be present. You can say, 'That's not okay.' You can record. You can report. You can refuse to laugh along." He nodded once, as if speaking directly to a million unseen viewers. "Because the question isn't whether bias exists," he said. "The question is, how many of us are willing to interrupt it when it's convenient to ignore?" He stepped back from the microphone. Then he added one last line, softer, almost tender. "Make room for people," he said, "before you know their titles." Months passed. The internet moved on, as it always did. But some things didn't. Larkspur Aviation Holdings rolled out mandatory bias and customer equity training across its facilities, but Andre insisted it be more than a slideshow people clicked through while answering emails. He helped design a new accountability system, one that tracked customer complaints, security calls, and staff behavior patterns. Not to punish people for a single awkward moment, but to expose the repeated habits that were always explained away. They partnered with independent auditors. They rewrote protocols so security couldn't be summoned as a customer filtering tool. They created a scholarship pipeline tied directly to careers in aviation maintenance, logistics, and engineering, paid apprenticeships for students from neighborhoods like Andre's. Not charity. Investment. The hardest part wasn't policy. It was culture. Because culture was the thing people defended without admitting they were defending it. Still, slowly, painfully, things shifted. A year after the incident, a young woman walked into that same showroom wearing a thrift coat and carrying a folder of documents. Her hand shook, but she stood tall. The receptionist greeted her warmly. Not performative, not wary, warm. "How can I help you today?" she asked. The young woman swallowed. "I'm here about the apprenticeship interview." The receptionist smiled. "Of course. We've been expecting you." Across the room, a sales associate glanced up, then offered a nod. Not because the young woman looked like money, but because she looked like a person. Outside, on the tarmac, the aircraft Andre purchased no longer gleamed as a symbol of luxury. It flew supplies to flooded towns, medical equipment to rural clinics, generators to neighborhoods knocked dark by storms. And sometimes, it carried teams of volunteers into places where roads had disappeared and hope was thin. Andre visited one such town on a gray morning, months after the confrontation. The air smelled like wet wood and mud. Houses stood gutted. People moved slowly, exhausted. A little girl in a pink raincoat watched the aircraft land, her mouth open in awe. Andre crouched beside her. "You ever seen one up close?" he asked. She shook her head, eyes huge. He smiled. "It's just a machine," he said. "But what matters is what we do with it." The girl looked up at him. "Are you the pilot?" He chuckled softly. "No, I'm just someone who helps it get where it needs to go." She stared at his face like she was trying to place him in a story she could carry. "You look important," she said. Andre's smile faded into something gentler. "I'm human," he said. "That's enough." Back home, Malik had grown taller. His voice had dropped a little. His questions had gotten sharper. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sun melted into orange behind the fence, Malik asked, "Do you think that man is sorry?" Andre didn't answer quickly. "I think," he said finally, "that being caught isn't the same as being changed." Malik nodded slowly. "Then why didn't you ruin him?" Andre turned, studying his son's face. "Because the point isn't to ruin people," he said. "The point is to build a world where they can't ruin others." Malik leaned his head against Andre's shoulder. "Do you still get scared walking into places?" Malik asked. Andre exhaled. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I don't let fear drive the wheel." Malik looked up. "When I'm older, and somebody treats me like that." Andre's voice was soft but firm. "You remember who you are," he said. "You stay steady. And if you can, if it's safe, you make them face what they are doing. Not with rage, with truth." Malik nodded. In the quiet, Andre's phone buzzed with a new message, an update from the scholarship program. Another student accepted. Another life shifted. Andre looked out at the street where the neighborhood lights flickered on one by one, stubborn against the dark. He'd spent his life learning how to survive being underestimated. Now he was spending it making sure others didn't have to. And somewhere, in a different part of the city, a showroom still gleamed under bright lights. But now, every time a staff member's hand hovered over the security button, they remembered the day the world watched. Not because of fear, because of accountability, because of dignity, because of one calm man who refused to shrink. So here's the question. When you don't get to scroll past forever, when you witness someone being quietly pushed out of a room they deserve to be in, will you be the bystander who watches, the voice that joins in, or the person who interrupts it before it becomes normal again?